back with another adventure in streaming. I'm just going to hit the ground running on this one and just run my mouth till I run out of shit to say. So, I finally saw Black Adam. Now, this is one I'm really going to need a cheat sheet for because I don't remember any of the technical people involved in it. So, the director is Jaume Collet-Serra. I have no idea who this is. It is a man from Spain. He's 48. Not familiar with any of his movies. He did The Shallows. I remember that one. Oh, he did the remake of House of Wax. So, okay, yeah. Anyway, not terrible, but just kind of pedestrian. So, he directed this movie, and the movie was written by 3 people I've never heard of. I thought Geoff Johns would write this movie, but he was one of the producers, and I'm pretty sure the treatment, he had something to do with the treatment. Because this film is an adaptation, the film called Black Adam is an adaptation of a series of arcs, elements from a series of arcs that appeared in the comic book series JSA, which ran from around 1999, I think, maybe a little earlier, 97, 98, 99, in there, to about 2004 when it was canceled and relaunched as the Justice Society of America. Now, Geoff Johns was involved with most of the run. Like, originally it was 2 writers. It was James Robinson, who had done this comic book miniseries, graphic novel, or whatever, called The Golden Age, which had a lot of the Earth 2 and Justice Society and World War II era DC heroes. And then his co-writer was David S. Goyer, who is a Hollywood script writer. He worked on, didn't he work on The Crow? No, it was David Shaw. He worked on Blade. He wrote Blade. He wrote the 3 Blades. He directed the 3rd one, though, unfortunately. He worked a little on Man of Steel. I can't remember if he worked on Batman or not. I mean, Batman Begins. Yeah, I think he worked on the Batman ones too. But he's done a whole bunch of TV and film stuff. His main comics ongoing thing was JSA. So after a short time, James Robinson left and was replaced by Geoff Johns. So then Geoff Johns, of course, began ascending into where he is now, which is a chief creative officer, I think, of DC. And Geoff Johns has done a lot of work on the TV show Titans, which is a hard R adult, harder than the Netflix Daredevil or Punisher shows. A very hard R adult take on the Teen Titans and new Teen Titans characters. I love it. I haven't done a formal review. One day I will. Geoff Johns has written some amazing episodes, including my favorite of that show. Geoff Johns is a very ingenious guy, very creative, great ideas, takes on things. He's inconsistent, he spreads himself thin. His Green Lantern work didn't interest me or impress me at all. And, a lot of the more popular stuff he's done in recent years I don't really care about. JSA is really kind of, I think, where he cut his teeth. And after a while, Goyer, I guess, probably got too busy with Hollywood and other projects. So Johns went solo for the latter half of the JSA run, and then he wrote and or co-wrote all the Justice Society of America series. I quit collecting it with issue 5 or 6. Not on purpose. I just stopped collecting monthly comics by that time again. And JSA, though, I have a pretty big run of, and I've got some of the graphic novel collections. And I think it's great. It's very strongly, heavily based on Roy Thomas's work. So Roy Thomas, wrote a series called All-Star Squadron in the 1980s for DC, where he was given free reign as an editor, the Earth 2 editor. So he loved the Justice Society of America, the World War II heroes, and I always loved them too. Justice Society was the only superhero team in DC. that I liked as a kid. I didn't really get into DC that much as a kid. I would get some quirky titles here and there, or somebody like Steve Ditko was doing it that I was familiar with. I'd pick up like Shade the Changing Man or The Creeper, showing my age here. And so I wasn't really Justice League. I collected for a few issues and just, but I'm one of these people that, I'm a total geek. I still wanted to know everything about it, wanted to, know the whole history of the Justice League. I could reel most of it off right now. But Justice Society, they were interesting. They were like middle-aged heroes. Middle-aged heroes. They've been through, sorry for that, been through a war, and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of people like them because they're from a different, simpler time, more wholesome. A lot of people like them because they're like pulp heroes from the 30s and 40s. That stuff is respected in Roy Thomas's work, but Roy Thomas, often in concert with his wife Annette, that they did bring kind of a little more modern characterization, more Marvel-like characterization to those characters in the series All-Star Squadron. And it ran a long time. Very uneven art-wise, though it had some brilliant art by Jerry Ordway and some great art by Rich Buckler, late Rich Buckler, who I knew, and a lot of very lackluster and poor art, unfortunately. But I stuck with it almost. I stuck with it almost to the bitter end, maybe to the bitter end. Concurrently with that, he did an America versus the Justice Society 4-issue miniseries. But he was insistent on not doing a modern day Justice Society story comic. Instead, he did a comic called Infinity Incorporated, which were the offspring and heirs to the JSA, like the next gen. And though by the time these comics came out, there could have been 2 next gens, but the Justice Society members, they were so wholesome they didn't start procreating until they were well into their 40s. So they were all virgins in World War II. Not many people know that, but anyway, so Infinity Inc. was a cool comic. I liked it, and it did, as the more longer it went on, some of its art originally was incredible. Ordway co-created it, did great art. It's his replacement started to wane, the quality started to wane, but of the art, but the stories got more and more cool, and they introduced a group called Helix, which were incredibly wild characters that obviously Roy's wife had just as huge a part as Roy in creating off the wall stuff, characters, Baby Boom and Windwalker and Mr. Bones. They were great, and they should have had their own series. So, and Mr. Bones eventually worked kind of as a liaison with the JSA, I believe, in the Justice Society of America series, but he never actually joined the team. I don't think he should have, but he did join Infinity Incorporated. So they were originally a evil bad guy team, and then he went good and actually became the most interesting character as the story went on. And he was forced to use his death touch to kill Sylvester Pemberton, who was the leader and funder of the Infinity Inc. team. And Roy went back to Marvel. He wasn't really happy after the Crisis on Infinite Earths and them all merging into one universe. There was no longer an Earth 2, and they had to kind of redo a lot of the history and retcon out the additional doppelganger characters like the Golden Age Superman, the Golden Age Batman, Wonder Woman. But the ones that were identical, not the ones like Green Lantern or Flash who looked different, had different origins. They remained. So what was there to do several years later? I guess, I don't know who came up with the idea, probably James Robinson, I would say. Let's do a series. Let's do a modern Justice Society series. Whoever's still left alive, figure out how they're still, active in their old age, and, use some of their offspring, like Infinity Incorporated, because they already established that, and take the legacy concept even further. And so the Justice Society becomes like an institution. It's not strictly revolved around 5 or 6 core members who were kind of always in it, even though I had other members, revolving and were part of it, but, didn't always fight with the team, weren't in every adventure, because every year, for years, they did a crossover with the Justice League. So, not every member of the JSA made those crossovers. And some characters, even Black Canary and Red Tornado, transferred over. Like they left Earth 2 and went to Earth 1. So the JSA, the way they approached the series, I thought was brilliant, and the art was great. They used Michael Bear, aka Mike Hernandez, who had done the best art, I think, on Infinity Incorporated, and on Young All Stars. That was a series I forgot to mention. Young All Stars was Roy's last attempt to do the World War II All Star Squadron milieu, but he also had younger characters, which were kind of surrogates for the characters that were retconned away, like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. As he put it, that energy has to go somewhere. So Young All Stars, also Danette, his wife, had a lot to do with, and it had consistently great art. And then Jean-Marc Lefissier started working with them, and it started tying in a lot of the pulp elements and a lot of the classic literature elements and Farmarian, as in Philip was a farmer kind of stuff, where the characters had their origins tied to classic genre literature characters like Captain Nemo or Hugo Danner, etc. Arthur Gordon Pym, and it was a great series. I loved it. And to me, that was the peak, and then Royal DC. So he was making the most out of the post-crisis, but he still wanted to do World War II. So sorry, Roy. I love you, but yeah. So these guys took it over, and they did a splendid job, I think. It was not to everyone's taste at first who were into the Justice Society, because it was a lot more modern. But I thought it was a lot more realistic. It's like, this is what we're going to do. These are where these characters are. They're stranded, and not stranded, but they're left living on this new Earth. They don't have any memories of Earth 2. And, they've gotten a retcon history, and we've smoothed all that out. We've established what actually happened in World War II. So it's like, now let's get over it, man. Who's left and what are they like, and how can we expand this team? So there wasn't, I'm sorry for all the annoying notifications. Some of them are spam. Captain Marvel, the original, the Shazam character, now is only known as Shazam. So they don't have to ever have any kind of license issue with Marvel over Captain Marvel. Shazam joined for a while. Captain Marvel joined Justice Society, and that was kind of an obvious choice, I thought. Another character from that original era, even though in the post-crisis he didn't appear until the modern day. And then they took on Black Adam. So Black Adam was Captain Marvel's arch foe, one of them, not the arch foe like Dr. Savannah, but he was like the evil Captain Marvel. And he was a lot cooler than Captain Marvel. He had a cooler name. He looked cooler. So yeah, there you go. So Geoff Johns really built on this. He's like, let's mess with his personality. This guy could be an anti-hero. So they explain why he did evil things sometimes. And then when he joined the Justice Society too, after Captain Marvel left. And that was a great run. He was a perfect foil and counterpoint. He had a different, ambiguous kind of morality. And, he had kind of a widow's peak, jet black hair, kind of receding, and pointy ears. So they kind of drew him a little bit like Namor the Submariner, and he kind of acted a little like Namor the Submariner. But that was cool. I mean, it was good, and his obsession was not Atlantis or Talakan, but it was Kahndaq, a fictional Middle Eastern country, They went into all this stuff, and they tied in his origin, and they tied in all of the Shazam mythology with his origin, as well as his crossover with the Egyptian mythology that involved characters such as Dr. Fate, Nabu, the character who inhabited the helmet of Dr. Fate. Nabu really lived in ancient Egypt. And another character who lived back then was Khufu, and Khufu was the original, Hawkman. He's reincarnated through the ages. In modern day, he's Carter Hall Hawkman. So now we're really getting to the meat of it. It is, that the crux of those stories, and Black Adam trying to save Kahndaq and all this, him kind of being willing to kill enemies, and then Atom Smasher, who was a second generation hero originally known as Nuklon. He was an heir to the original Atom. He was kind of like starting to admire Black Adam's approach. When we get into the Justice Society of America series, the last one by Geoff Johns, we had another legacy character called Cyclone, and she was the granddaughter of the original Red Tornado, who was not an android, but was this strange overweight woman called Abigail Hunkle. I think in the movie they call her Abigail, but I don't remember the comic. Ma Hunkle is what they called her. But the movie was pretty accurate, so we'll go with that. So she was basically Abigail Hunkle's granddaughter, somehow Ma Hunkle, who had not partaken of any of the age reducing and extension plot devices that a lot of the other older characters who were in World War II had. Somehow, though, she was around in 2005. Very old, but not like totally feeble. So that's like 65. She'd been 85, at least, maybe 90. But she looked about a healthy 70. But let's just go with it. So Cyclone was her granddaughter, who somehow got powers like the android Red Tornado. She was blood related to the original human Red Tornado. A lot of stretches like that happen. And Geoff Johns, Jay, said there's a lot of synchronicity. In the old days, it was just like, in the World War II era, let's just, whatever comes to mind, let's throw it in the wall and see if it sticks. We got to hurry up and turn these fucking comics out. And so a lot of stupid concepts, but a lot of cool ones, a lot of surreal, kind of weird. And JSA has always had a touch of that absurdism and anything goes magic to it, especially had magical characters like Dr. Fate and the Spectre. And Roy did a good job with that aspect, keeping that aspect alive. So Geoff Johns, he made the plots more modern, more gritty, not super dark and gritty, but more gritty, more adult somewhat, not like, extended, nude sex scenes or extreme mutilation, torture porn, but just mature in tone, adult in tone. And I think it was great. He balanced the drama, he balanced the continuity, he really was tight with the continuity. And unlike Neil Gaiman, I'm about to commit heresy here. I'll probably lose half my subscribers. Neil Gaiman based quite a lot of his series Sandman on Roy Thomas's work also on Earth 2. And in my personal opinion, some people don't like it because, including Roy, don't like it because they feel like they changed the continuity. I don't mean like retconned it, but changed the intentions for the characters originally and gave them kind of undignified fates. And I agree with that. I agree with that, not from a purist point of view, though. Like, they should have been this way, and maybe Neil Gaiman was just trying to be dark and gritty. It was more like Neil Gaiman's heart was probably in the right place originally, but he was given a lot of freedom by DC. He had been given an unprecedented amount of freedom and very partial ownership of Sandman from the beginning. Now, I have no idea how a guy who didn't have a lot of work under his belt to speak of, though he was kind of an acolyte of Alan Moore and part of the British wave, I don't know how he got this treatment. he's been lucky. He's always kind of done this. Either he's a shrewd dealer or he has a great agent manager who does this, lawyer, team. He maybe hypnotizes people, maybe sleeps with the right people. I don't know. I'm just kidding in case Neil Gaiman's watching. And I have met Neil Gaiman before. I interviewed him. This was many years ago. I've been up and down in my opinions of him as a person and as a writer. I can't say I'm a fan, but I'm not a detractor, though I have been. And as a person, I really kind of go back and forth, on him. But I don't know him personally, so I do think he's one of the more overrated fiction writers, genre fiction writers of all time. And I think he's one of the more overrated comic book writers of all time, even though he is one of the great comic book writers. But, all right, so I've committed heresy. So, Gaiman follows those threads, all the way through the series or whatever. And some of them are in the TV series Sandman. Some of the Roy Thomas characters are retained, like Hector Hall and Lita Trevor. Though they're not tied to Hawkman and Wonder Woman respectively anymore. Yeah, I'm not interested in the Sandman show. One day, for completism's sake, I'll watch it. But I've seen quite a few clips. I've watched some explained videos about it and some analyses, and I'm pretty turned off by what I saw. It's fine. If you're a Sandman Neil Gaiman fanatic, you'll love it. Since I'm not, I have a different, more skeptical, I don't want to say discerning, because that makes it sound like people who are fans are not discerning. Just more critical, maybe harsher lens I'm viewing it through. And I do think they made some mistakes in the casting and look of some of the characters. And I don't just mean making Death a black actress. There's a lot of things that could be said about that. Reasons to like it, reasons to dislike it, valid reasons to dislike it without being like, you're a racist. It's not about that. And same with the main character. His look, and there are times when he's extremely evocative of the character Morpheus, the original Sandman, not in DC publishing, but in the history of the DC universe, the oldest Sandman. And then there are times when you're like, why does he looks like he's some guy in a band, some British guy in a band, but then that's kind of what Neil Gaiman's always looked like. And that's not a diss or by any means. So it doesn't interest me really that much. What the changes are what interested me. That's what I wanted to find out how the adaptation fared. And of course they changed a lot of stuff that they felt they had to for legal conflicting licensing reasons, like not using John Constantine, and then other things they didn't need to do, I didn't think. In the case of John Constantine, obviously he's been a character all through the Arrowverse DC TV shows on CW, and briefly had his own series, and not talking about the movie iteration. It's extremely different from the comic book character. But the one that's more well adapted, he actually has not had a series or live action adventures that are anywhere near as gritty and dark as the Hellblazer series or his other appearances in books like Swamp Thing. He's much more of a mainstream character now. He's very removed tonally from the character Alan Moore created and Vincent Toddleman created. And which Jamie Delano and Garth Ennis and Warren Ellis all fantastic fucking work. Mike Carey, he's had a ton of great works. Great Hellblazer. I've never really bought that many issues, but I've had a few of the collections. I have sold those recently on an eBay store, but I read them and I really liked them. Garth Ennis, as usual, did a fantastic job on those. What I was going to say about Constantine is they decided they couldn't use him in Sandman, or really couldn't use him, and they made it Johanna Constantine, who was already an ancestor of his. So they just made her immortal. So she's still, in the flashbacks in centuries past, but she's in the modern day too. In the Doom Patrol show, they actually used the character Willoughby Kipling from the comic books, who is the Constantine-like character. Now, in the comic books, they wanted to use John Constantine in this fulfill this function in Doom Patrol, a function similar to what he fulfilled in Swamp Thing. And for some reason, it was decided there was a conflict. And so Morrison made a pastiche character called Willoughby Kipling. And he appeared several times, and he was cool. So when he appeared in the show, it was one of my favorite current actors, Mark Sheppard, one of my favorite British actors. And I was like, this is fucking brilliant. And he is brilliant. He's still on the show, and he has a much bigger role. I mean, he's not in every arc or every episode, but he's incredible. He's very prominent in season 4, which will be the last season. So anyway, that was kind of a long-winded way talking about Sandman and Neil Gaiman changing a lot of the mythology of the Earth 2 characters. So this movie, Black Adam, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is an adaptation of, well, it is rooted in the Shazam Black Adam mythology. It goes back many decades, and it's been, was conceived for Fawcett Comics and tweaked and worked with DC. But it also incorporates all of the work Geoff Johns did on JSA, some with David Goyer, and in expanding Black Adam and making Black Adam a really prominent, cool, interesting character. Really one of the coolest DC current characters. And being tied in again with the Justice Society characters and mythos. And that was kind of cool the way they folded the Shazam mythos into the JSA, because those characters also were rooted in, they were characters from the 40s and 50s, just like the JSA. So, a lot of people hate this movie, and it's taken me a half hour to get to saying that. And I'll probably be excoriated and laughed at for saying I liked the movie. I liked Black Adam. To be honest, it's the only DC, okay, let me qualify this, the only DC extended universe, as they called it, feature film that I have liked. I didn't like Man of Steel. I didn't like Batman versus Superman. I didn't like Aquaman. I didn't like Justice League. I liked the redone Zack Snyder version a little better. Shazam, tepid. It was fun for what it was. Hated Suicide Squad, both of them. Wonder Woman, thought the first one was pretty good. Second one, thought it was okay, but I happened to catch it again recently, and a little better than I remembered. But that was kind of the peak of all those movies, was the Wonder Woman movies, and really her being in the Justice League, in my opinion. So Black Adam is one of the last, next to the last movie, because the Flash movie will be the last, set in this universe, the DC set universe, but because it has direct ties in with Superman and with the Suicide Squad, and via Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis in the Suicide Squad films, and a character I've always hated, and but they adapted her accurately. I hate the character and all that kind of. So well done. Everybody's adapted accurately. There are things that probably annoyed people about this movie. I don't know why. I would like to hear more from fans who actually read Black Adam stories at JSA. I haven't heard much from them. I'm sure they've said something, but they're drowned out by the fan bros who really just fucking suck, man. Everybody's worried about Dwayne Johnson's career, and Dwayne Johnson himself is worried about his career. And he's kind of like he's almost taking this ownership of Black Adam, like he wants him to be this iconic DCEU film character. And the thing is, it's taken him 15 years to get this movie off the ground. And The Rock is 50 now, I believe, and he's kind of starting to look it, and he's in great shape, but he's getting a little haggard. And, he had the hairline of Black Adam when they started the project. Exactly. But his hair started falling out so bad, he started shaving it. So now he's Black Adam in the movie has got a completely shaved head. But that's okay. It doesn't really, being way back here with a little black or being shaven head, it's fine. Costume is completely comic accurate. The movie takes that deep well of Shazam mythology, which directly ties in with the Shazam film, the DCU, another obvious, crossover. And it's firmly in that universe, but tonally it's nothing like any of those other movies. A lot of them strive to be very dark and bleak and edgy. This one actually is pretty cynical. The Black Adam's just kind of a cynical character, and he doesn't have a lot of quips. I thought he's going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger all through the thing. There are a couple of times when he says things like that, because he makes friends with this kid, of course. The kid's not too obnoxious. His mother is a little unrealistically brilliant and incredible at fighting for no reason that we ever know of. And then one of the villains called Ishmael, he's kind of annoying as fuck, and until he turns into this CGI demon who looks really cool. And I can't remember if I thought he was based on this DC character Gog, but I don't know. Maybe it's a different character he's based on. But basically, the origin is like the comics. They kind of smoothed out the ancient stuff. They didn't directly, overtly tie Dr. Fate and Hawkman and Black Adam, any of them with each other as far as ancient history. With Dr. Fate and Hawkman, there's a few lines dropped here and there implying their origins. With Hawkman, I wish there had been more about his reincarnation. There's hints about it. I don't remember the name of the actor who played Hawkman, but he was a black guy. I don't know, youngish, 30ish, maybe 40 at the oldest. He was good. He wasn't my ideal Carter Hall, not because he's black, because let's face it, if Khufu was Egyptian, then he'd probably be black. We're finally depicting Egyptians as black after depicting them as Caucasian for decades in movies and literature and stuff, art. And, so the reincarnation, Carter Hall being black was fine. I like the way they did Carter Hall. I like the way he's really incredible superhero. He's got his shit together on every level. He's obviously got a lot of money. He's at Hall Manor, which is from the comics. He's got this plane. He has all the weapons. He looks like Hawkman. The wings look great. The helmet, to me, looked great. Some people didn't like it. He's just a badass character. He's a little mean and cynical, more than I expect from Hawkman. But the Geoff Johns iteration of Hawkman was a little more mean and cynical than previous ones. However, conversely, he always also has this kind of like heroes don't kill kind of thing, like Daredevil and Captain America and certain other characters. They won't go over the line like, say, Wolverine or the Punisher. And therein has the clash with Black Adam, who has no line really. It's whatever he decides it is. So there's obviously ideological clash. Some of the quarreling that Hawkman does with him and with the character Adam Smasher, who's in it, is a little silly the way it's written. The actors do the best they can, but the good thing is it's kept to a minimum. The movie, to me, keeps going. It was one story that took place in maybe 1 or 2 days, and it's tight, and it's got unity of effect, kind of, like I talked about in my review of Smile. And so the JSA is in it. So the one characters they selected were some of the ones I just mentioned. That's why I mentioned them. Adam Smasher and Cyclone, both incredibly well cast. I don't want to say incredibly well cast. Well, he was fine. But they look comics perfect. Their powers are great. The effects are great. There's not this horribly rushed CG soup mess that is, horribly that afflicts all of the other DCEU films. and sometimes near the third act in a couple of Marvel films that we have a little bit of that, unfortunately. Um, I thought the effects were tight. I thought they were great. They were either looked very real, or when they didn't look real, they looked surreal. That's the way to go with the CGI. And Dr. Fate is like the leader of the JSA. He's old. Well, he's played by Pierce Brosnan, who I think was 68 when he was cast, and he's 70 or about to turn 70 now. And then Hawkman and him have been friends for many years, and so like I said, there are hints Hawkman's been reincarnated. Dr. Fate, Nabu may have known the other incarnations. This is implied, and if you're a comic book dude, you're probably going to go, well, that's probably accurate. Just like you do in the real accurate Marvel movies, you can kind of infer to a point certain things that they haven't actually 100% showed as canon. Because, the literalists, I've told you I'm not a literalist. Conversely, I'm not a huge speculator like fanbros are too. So I'm kind of like, I like inferences, and I'll draw my inferences until something canonical contradicts them. I'll speculate along those lines, in my head, but I'm not going to go on the internet and say this is absolutely how it is, or I'm not going to assume it's supposed to be exactly like the comic books. However, then there are people who are like, it doesn't have to be like the comic books, fuck that. And it's like, well, no, but a major reason these Marvel movies have been successful as opposed to previous superhero movie waves in America movies, because there's been superhero and comic book movies all over the world for decades before Marvel MCU, is that it's much more faithful to the characters, and that resonates. Especially along lifelong fans like me, fans of the characters. I really don't care about Marvel comics anymore as an entity. And this movie has that essence to me. To me, those are the characters. Hawkman's not 100%, but he's maybe 80%. Dr. Fate is like 100%. Pierce Brosnan brings it. He's DC's Doctor Strange. I mean, this is exactly how he should have been all along. All the characters look perfect. I mean, it's the action's good. It's like I said, the effects aren't this super rush. There's some where people are swooping around, flying and fighting in midair, but it's it's a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more. They spend a little more time trying to make it real and slow it down. Like, for instance, Black Adam prefers to levitate through most of the movie. He's confident in his power. I mean, he doesn't like fly around, like Superman, but he levitates a lot, and it looks great. And his origin is very close to the comics. They changed a couple of details that are kind of a twist. There's kind of a twist to Black Adam's origin, but it didn't bother me. I thought it served the movie dramatically. It gave a little more dimension to the character. I really like the movie. I don't really know what else to say. I'm done. The review's over. No, I'm kidding. But it's not going to be much longer. I just wanted to give you guys some background on what it's based on and what goes into it. So maybe you'll look at it from that point of view, like, well, it's very comics accurate. So there are things that are really worthwhile watching if you like comic book movies and if you're into good adaptations. And to me, it's a great adaptation. Now, is it a great movie? I've talked about those standards before. You can be one without being the other, or you can be both, but that's more rare. It's a great adaptation. Movie, it's good. It's solid. It's not great. It's not brilliant. But it's not abysmal. I mean, it's much more serious than the vast majority of Dwayne Johnson's roles. He does very well. He embodies the character, and I can kind of see why he wanted the character to continue. Because he, meaning Dwayne Johnson and the writers and the director, they achieved with Black Adam what they couldn't achieve with Superman or Batman in the DCEU or Aquaman. which was to make a character that seems like a big, powerful superhero, but he's dark, he's gritty, you know, he's you know, he's just a little more realistic. He has some moral ambiguity in him, and it's not forced. It's a natural part of his character, kind of like it is with Wolverine in the movies. Though Wolverine in the movies doesn't have it to the extent he does in the comic. Well, he does in Logan. Logan really is like the nihilistic Wolverine, that some version that some people like a lot. I like him too, but I like the softer version too. It just depends. I like that dichotomy. That doesn't exist in Black Adam, but I like his stoicism. I think a lot of the dialogue was terse, and that was the way to go. It wasn't melodramatic. Some of Doctor Fate's was, and all the kind of mystical stuff he said is totally from the comic. It's really incredible payoff with him, and it's kind of a sad one too. Yeah, I really dug it. It's one I would buy on Blu-ray to have and occasionally revisit. It gave me a thrill that I initially get from a pretty good to great Marvel movie, where I want to watch it again, or I get excited, or I go, "Wow, this is just like the comic." This is just me, okay? This is just my perspective. You don't have to agree. Yeah, you do. You better fucking agree. Okay. But that feeling is a nice feeling. I didn't have that feeling watching any of the other DCEU movies. I had a little bit of that feeling watching Batman Begins, I will admit. Dark Knight, a little bit, but Dark Knight was so much its own tone to a different. That took the tone to a different level that I didn't get that. Oh wow, this is like the comic. I was feeling it. When Batman Begins, there were some times I was feeling that feeling of awe. Superman the movie, no, I wasn't a Superman fan when that came out, so I didn't feel that way. I loved Superman the movie. I loved it then. I love it now. I think it's incredible. In some ways, I like it more and more as I get older, because it was such an anomaly among American comic book movies. Christopher Reeve is Superman. He can't be replaced. He can be semi-cloned, like with Brandon Routh, who did okay, and I like Brandon Routh, but yeah. So, to me, the DCEU has been a huge failure artistically, and largely critically, but I don't care about what other critics think, really. Financially, some of it's been a big hit, some of it's not. There are a lot of people it's underperformed where they wanted it to perform. I mean, it's still making millions and millions and millions of dollars, but it costs millions and millions of dollars. So Black Adam, I'm going to look up its stats and see. It's probably a dismal failure by Hollywood standards financially. I know the new Quantumania Ant-Man movie is, which I saw in the theater. I'm still pondering doing a review. Another one that everyone hates, but I liked. I actually liked Black Adam better, just because it's like finally that corner of the DC universe. Finally, we have the Justice Society in a feature film. I mean, they've been in Legends of Tomorrow and some of these CU Arrowverse shows, and I didn't like the way they were done. They were in the Stargirl series on CW, and that was better. Geoff Johns had a lot to do with that show. And if you could take the best elements of the Stargirl series and merge it with the setup in Black Adam of how the team is portrayed, you could really have something. My main complaint about the JSA in this movie is there's only 4 of them act. 2 of them are, Atom Smasher and Cyclone are designated or touted as newer members, like the next generation. Whereas Dr. Fate and Hawkman are carrying on this long tradition. So where's everybody else? Are they all dead? They should have gotten one other character. And I went through my head and I'm like, okay, the Flash, that would conflict with the Flash TV series and the Flash movie. I thought Green Lantern, that would confuse everybody. and it'd be even more costly budget-wise to show his powers. I went through a bunch of them. I thought Wildcat, who's my personal favorite, would be pretty cool. I don't know how they deal with him being an older guy and not really having any superpowers. So in that sense, maybe not, because he couldn't really hang with all those other characters. But I think he would have been a cool contrast. So I don't know. I think there should have been a fifth character. 4-person teams, I don't know. There's something there. I don't know. They make me uneasy. I think there needs to be that fifth wheel. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I liked Black Adam. If you don't, it's okay. I still love you. You're wrong, but no, I'm kidding. I understand. So